Welcome back to another episode of I Wish They Knew, a show where we share big ideas that deserve more attention in about the time it takes to enjoy a cup of coffee. I'm Joe Hirsch. Today's wish comes from Shira Miller. Shira is an award-winning keynote speaker, TEDx talker, certified executive coach, and the chief communications officer of National DCP, the $3 billion supply chain company serving Dunkin's franchisees. Thank you for that, by the way. That gave me my cup of coffee this morning. She's also the author of Free and Clear, Get Unstuck, and Live the Life You Want. It's a great book. Recommend it. Shira, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here, Joe. Thank you.
So what do you wish more people knew?
I wish more people knew that when you apologize when you've done nothing wrong, it hurts you at work and at home, and you can immediately change that bad habit.
Okay, so the reason we apologize is to make things right with others, but I feel like there are times when an apology can actually make things worse for us. When are apologies doing more harm than good?
When you're apologizing and it's not necessary. For example, if the first words out of your mouth are "I'm sorry," when you have done absolutely nothing wrong, or you could be using self-deprecating language. Perhaps you're going to be making a big presentation and you say, "In my humble opinion," or "I'm not an expert, but." When you start with that kind of apology speak, you are setting your ideas up to not matter. You're saying, "I'm less than." And that is not a good position to be in at work or at home.
Yeah, so the self-sabotage comes in when we diminish our standing, our confidence, our credibility with apology speak. Can you give me some other examples of where we're doing that? I feel like it happens a lot more often than we are aware of.
Well, if you go back to the classic "I'm sorry," it's apologizing for things that are out of your control. If you start apologizing, "I'm sorry about the weather. I'm sorry about the traffic for today." If you're not Mother Nature, you're not causing these things. So there's no need for that to be the first thing out of your mouth or what you're focusing on. You're taking attention away from what actually matters.
Okay, so apology speak, it's diminishing our standing, it's dealing a blow to our credibility, maybe our career, possibly. And I feel like the wisdom is in the wording. So can you share some alternative ways that we might rephrase apology speak so that we're not undermining ourselves? Because I think our tendency is probably to do that.
A classic thing that you can do to immediately reverse the situation is to make it about the audience. And let's say that you are running late to a meeting and you show up, and instead of spending 10 minutes apologizing for being late, you say, "Thank you for your patience."
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So you're acknowledging what happened, but you're not actually taking accountability for what you can't control.
Exactly. Or let's say that you would like to get the opinion of someone else at work about a project. Instead of walking in and saying, "I'm sorry, I just need a few minutes of your time," you walk in and say, "I really value your opinion. Can I run something by you?"
Yeah. So saying you're sorry when you're asking for someone's time or opinion, it's almost like saying that you're an imposition and a burden. And why would they want to help you if you're such a burden to them?
Exactly. It's approaching things with confidence and saying that you matter, your contributions matter, and it also elevates your interactions with others. Sometimes people say "I'm sorry" when they're just trying to connect with others, or they're diminishing their own light. They feel like they're going to be intimidating. It might have been something that happened when they were a teenager. They were told they were too much, or all of the attention is going to them, and they develop a habit of saying "I'm sorry" when really, if you sit back and stand in your own brilliance and your own accomplishments, you're going to have better outcomes in relationships with others.
Yeah, it almost feels like apology speak is just a bunch of empty calories, verbal empty calories that, we're filling our communication with. And in reality, it's not serving us well.
Such a good analogy, Joe. I would say that apology speak is the Twinkies of the snack food world. They're not really fulfilling. And afterwards you go, "My gosh, so many regrets."
Yeah,
So
why
yeah,
did I do that?
yes,
At the end of the
yes.
Twinkie. Exactly right. You have a great system for getting more intentional about how we communicate so that we're not undermining our brilliance, we're not diminishing our standing, and we're presenting ourselves as the confident people that we want to be seen as. Take us through that process, through those steps of how we can make apologies more constructive.
Absolutely. Well, the first step is determine if an apology is necessary. So if you've done something wrong, let's say you took credit for somebody else's work, you cast shade on their capabilities, yeah, you need to apologize. You need to own it. But if you've done nothing wrong, an apology is not necessary. Save that for when it actually matters and is needed.
So that's interesting because in our effort to set the right tone with other people and begin with apology speak, we're actually making apologies less meaningful when they actually have to be said and shared.
It becomes verbal filler,
Yeah.
like an in a conversation. It it's a very it's a very ineffective way to communicate that is hurting your credibility.
Yeah. And so we're opting for words that aren't really serving us well.
Correct.
Okay. So I've determined that an apology is actually necessary. I've done something wrong. What do I do next?
So if something is wrong, then you directly apologize to somebody. You come out, you own your crap, and move on from that. Now, if an apology is not necessary and you've done nothing wrong, the next step is to pay attention, because apology speak is a bad habit. And think about every instance of when you start apologizing. And I tell people, take a couple of days and just make a little list. So let's say you're in a grocery store, you're minding your own business, someone's playing on their phone and they bump right into you in your car. Instead of saying, I'm sorry, you did nothing wrong. You don't have to do that, but note that. And then take a couple of days and figure out, was this a couple of times or was it more into the double digits? That way you can see the circumstances and perhaps the people. Maybe there is a director at work that when you walk into that person's office, you constantly feel like you've got to apologize because they're very intimidating. And
Hmm.
that's the power dynamic with that individual. So you can plan ahead when you start paying attention and figure out what your triggers are. Maybe it's a frenemy or a family member, who's a destructive person in that way.
Yeah. So paying attention to when it's happening and where it's happening, that's going to give you a better context and sense of what your responses are in those situations.
Yeah, yeah, and then you can plan ahead and come armed and go, "Oh my gosh, every time I talk to John at work, I find myself apologizing. I'm intentionally going to choose some different language because an apology is not necessary."
Okay. So I made the call. I paid attention. What do I do next?
You reframe your words. And we started talking about that a little bit earlier. Think about what you're actually trying to communicate with that apology. Are you trying to connect with another person? Is it empathy or appreciation? And then you reframe your words. So, as I said, if you're running a few minutes late to a meeting, instead of spending 10 minutes apologizing, thank people for their patience. Thank people for their flexibility. Make it about them.
It's That's a smart way to do it because you're ultimately not making it about you. You make it about the other person. What do I do after that?
You claim your accomplishments. And I really love this step. It's where you pick one thing that you're great at. Maybe it's singing or team building or the sport of axe throwing, which is really fun. If you've never tried it, Joe,
I
I would
have to
say,
give it a shot.
okay, I recommend. It's really great. And so you pick that one thing, and before you start your day, just take a minute in the morning to focus on it. And how does it make you feel? Are you proud? Of that accomplishment? Are you fulfilled? And you let that positive resonance fill you and it builds your self confidence. And so when you start the day thinking about your best quality or skill, it helps you unlock your full potential.
You're almost replacing a negative instinct or a negative soundtrack that's playing in your head with something more positive, and that prevents you from feeling you have to apologize in the first place.
Absolutely. You're starting with confidence.
That's a good way to start.
Absolutely.
So we spent a lot of time so far discussing the person who's over apologizing, and those are some great techniques on how to put that under control. Then I guess you have the other extreme, right? So we'll call that the under apologizer, I guess, the person who rarely or never wants to take accountability for his or her actions. Do you have any tips for dealing with someone who won't deal with their own mistakes?
You need to have strong clarity and insight because you can't change that person's behavior. When they are coming from a place where they feel they're stronger for not apologizing, even when they're wrong, you're not going to be able to do anything to change it except to monitor your own response to it. So instead of falling in the trap where you over apologize because they should be doing it and they're not, you need to have a different strategy and realize that individual is not going to apologize when they need to. So I need to stand strong and let certain things go that I can't influence, know when to move the conversation on to other parts and accept it for what it is. It's reading the terrain and knowing you can't change their behavior.
Yeah, it really comes down to knowing yourself and realizing that you can only change what you can control. And you can't control someone else's emotional set point, but you can control the way you react and manage it.
So true.
Mm. The book is free and clear, and the author, and I'm not sorry we had this conversation at all, is Shira Miller. Shira, thanks for sharing your wish with us today.
Thanks so much, Joe.